Hello there, adventurers. Ben.
Danielle.
And you're watching the...
Melick Adventures.
The That was kind of like, man.
I was cold.
Would you like to try that again?
No, I was cold.
And you're watching the...
Melick Adventures.
The channel where we do...
Anything we want and
like...
praise in our house.
Yeah. Because it's like 100 and some odd degrees today. Ugh. But anyways, if you're new to the channel, this is normally how it goes. Mr. Astro, though, is going to ask you to...
Go subscribe.
And also Mr. Rocky here is going to heavenly ask you to...
Nothing.
Nothing. Because he's going to say to you, heavenly say to you.
If you're returning.
If you're returning to the channel, he will say...
Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
There you go. Don't mess it up. But everybody make sure you like the video.
Subscribe.
Comment down below and...
Share the video.
Yes, go. Do now. But first... So if you're a follower of the channel, normally when you see me wearing a bathrobe, it's a story time with Ben. However, you would be correct. It is a story time with Ben, but instead of Tabitha, we have a Danielle.
Wow.
Tabitha's very upset.
Wow.
As she lays on the ground. But it's okay. You can be our special guest for story time with Ben.
Wow.
Tabitha's okay with giving that up.
During this time, because this is what?
This is a Melick Adventures collaboration series video.
Yes. What is Max?
It is a series that Danielle created in an effort to help us save money when it came time to videos, and we're extending it out to our community of peeps if they want to join in as well. In fact, for this Max, we have those down in the description below that are joining in with this month. But Max is a monthly, bi-monthly,
the second Tuesday and the last Thursday
of every month, celebrating a specific theme. Most of the time it's a movie, sometimes it's a show or a topic.
It's mainly all movies unless we throw in a special one.
And so people can do anything they want as long as it relates back to the theme. And just because you're not in the collaboration doesn't mean you can't join in as well. So if you're like, ooh, I want to do that, and you want to, tag us in your video and do it, go right ahead. If you want to be a part of the Max, but you can only do certain times, you don't have to do every single one. Hit up Danielle. We'll get you in the group.
On Instagram.
There you go. But what is this month's theme? Because we're at the end of July. No, beginning of July. We're starting a new month. What is our theme?
Pete's Dragon.
And so we figured we don't have very much. I mean, we have a plush.
Up there.
Oh.
You see him?
Yes. I thought we had one back here too. Oh, wait. No, that's a whatchamacallit thing.
Oh, well.
The moose thing?
Yeah.
Moozles? Woozles?
Woozles.
Woozles. Sorry, Jake.
Oh, Jake is yelling at you.
Anyways, so we are going to do a story time with Ben. How this rolls is I read it, I show it, I read it, I show it, until we finish the book. I know it's been a while since you've been in here, huh?
I will just leave now.
Where are you going?
You can finish this with Tabitha.
Are you sure?
Yes. Astro and I will leave you.
Oh, okay. Well,
goodbye.
Most people do not understand dragons. They think dragons are all wicked creatures who like to scare people with their fiery breath. Poppycock! Take Elliot the dragon, for instance. He is so kindly and polite that he often becomes invisible just to keep from frightening anyone. Of course, he wasn't being invisible when he met Pete, but he knew right away that Pete wasn't like other people. Pete thought Elliot's green scales looked just right, and he liked it when Elliot breathed fire, a most sensible lad. Now if Pete was sensible and kind, the terrible Gogan family he lived with were not. They made Pete work from early in the morning until late at night. They shouted at him a lot, too. At last, Elliot did what any clever dragon would do. He arranged for Pete to run off with him. They ran and they ran until they came to the little seaside town of Passamaquoddy. Elliot became invisible since he didn't want to upset the townspeople. There on the beach near town they found a fine cave. It was just the proper size for a large dragon and a small boy, so they moved right in. I should also say it has been a hot minute since I've watched this movie. Of course, it was a trifle damp. Elliot was about to warm it with a blast of his fiery breath when a young woman came hurrying along. She didn't see Elliot because he was invisible, but she did see Pete. "You look cold and hungry," she said to Pete. "My name is Nora. Come along with me to the lighthouse where I live." Pete went, since he certainly was cold and hungry. Elliot followed as quietly as a dragon can. When he peeked through the window, he saw Lampy, Nora's father, tending the light that warned the ships and kept them from running up on the reef. Elliot also saw Nora feeding Pete clam chowder. Then she tucked him into bed, just as a mother would do. The next day, Nora bought Pete some new clothes. He came and showed his new suit to Elliot, who thought he looked grand. His old clothes were so ragged that you could hardly call them clothes at all. The day after that, Nora took Pete to school. Elliot thought this was a perfectly good idea, since only dragons are born knowing everything they need to know. Nora's a fine person, thought Elliot, one day when he and Pete were on the beach. She's exactly the sort of woman Pete should have for a mother, but why does she look so sad? As he talked to Elliot, Pete mentioned that Nora was waiting for her sweetheart, a lad named Paul, who had sailed away many months ago. "His ship sank," said Pete. "Lampy says he's dead, but Nora's sure he's alive and he'll come back to her one day." "Aha!" Elliot thought. "I wonder what I can do about that." Certain that Pete would behave himself, be kind to Nora, and help Lampy tend the light in the lighthouse, Elliot disappeared. Pete didn't mind. He was used to it. What he didn't know was that Elliot was gone, really gone, from the cave near the sea and the little town of Passamaquoddy. Elliot had to find Paul. Elliot did find Paul, and quite easily too, since dragons can do things that people wouldn't dream of. Paul was in a hospital far, far from Passamaquoddy. He had a nasty bump on his head when his ship went down, and he couldn't remember anything about Nora or Lampy or the lighthouse. Why, he couldn't even remember his own name. If a bump on the head did that to him, thought Elliot, no doubt another bump will set him right. He tipped over Paul's bed, and Paul came tumbling out. Just as Elliot planned, he bumped his head exactly hard enough, but not too hard. "By golly, George!" Paul cried. "Now, by golly, George! Now I remember. I'm Paul, and Nora is waiting for me. I must be very late." With that, he got dressed and rushed out of the hospital, looking for a ship that would carry him back to Nora. Elliot was proud of himself. Off he flew to Passamaquoddy to tell Pete that Paul would soon be home. But when he arrived, a surprise awaited him. Pete wasn't at the lighthouse. He wasn't in the cave either. Where could he be? The dragon wondered. Ashore 2. As Elliot raced along the beach, searching high and low, he seemed to hear Pete calling. Elliot followed his voice into town. And who should be there but the Gogans? They had put Pete into a sack and were hauling him away in a wagon. Well, Pete was Elliot's boy, and Elliot was Pete's own dragon. Was Elliot going to stand there for that? No, indeed. Elliot stopped worrying about upsetting people. He became visible and he charged at the Gogans, breathing fire and spreading clouds of smoke across the town. He roared like the gale that was blowing in from the sea. The townspeople tumbled over one another as they ran to get out of the way. Then the Gogans went flying head over heels out of their wagon and one by one into a barrel of tar. When they pulled themselves out, they scooted out of town and never came back. No sooner had Elliot rescued Pete than another danger appeared. The light! The light! Shouted the mayor of the town. The light in the lighthouse is out! It was true, and Elliot knew that out on the dark and stormy ocean was the ship that was carrying Paul home to Nora. It would surely run onto the rocks unless someone lit the lamp again. Elliot sped to the lighthouse and blew his fiery breath at the big lamp in the tower. The light flared brightly, and Paul's ship steered clear of the reefs and came safely into the harbor. There was hugging and kissing and shouting and cheering. The loudest cheers were for Elliot the dragon, the greatest dragon, visible or invisible, ever to come into Passamaquoddy. Elliot felt quite pleased with himself. Pete would be safe at the lighthouse with Nora and Paul, and whenever Elliot wanted to visit him, he could, because now the people of Passamaquoddy understood about dragons. What a good little story. Like I said, haven't seen Pete's Dragon in a very long time, so maybe it's time to go back into a movie night. But until then, friends, make sure you stay safe, stay magical, and as always, keep reading. We'll see you on the next Melick Adventures collaboration series.